Check, check. Check.
Check. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I heard whoever that was.
That was Troy. I'm got a weird setup here. I'm at the Jones baseball game and I have remote.
Okay. At least I know your number ends in 55, so. I'm going to step away for 1 minute. I'll be right back.
Okay, Sarah, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. Okay, it looks like we have hopefully 7 here. And I'll call the meeting to order. Jones LLC emergency budget meeting at 6:01.
Okay, I'll do a roll call. Bowman? I know she's not here. Anaya.
Here.
Bugs?
I think she can join late.
Okay, let me know if you see her join.
Yep.
Hi, Violet.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
No, I just taken roll, so just got to your name actually. Cresswell.
Here?
Hernandez.
Present.
Okay. Troy.
Here.
Okay. Me, I'm here. Martinsek.
Here.
Latrice.
Here.
Menjivar.
Present.
Powers.
Here.
Zen.
Here.
Okay, we have quorum. Making a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Howard second. Boyd.
Yay.
Prado.
Yay.
Cresswell.
Yay.
Hernandez.
Yay.
Hillbrands.
Yay.
Ma, yay. Martinsek.
Yay.
Menjivar.
Yay.
Powers.
Here.
Zen.
Here.
Okay. That's okay. I know what you meant. So the agenda is approved, and take it over, Cassie.
Okay, it looks like we do not have any public participation sign up, so I think we are good there.
Actually, Jackie just said that she'd like to address the board, so I don't know if this would be a good time to do that.
Probably. Yes, I think so. Sarah, did you think Mr. Voigt was going to come in for a bit at the beginning? No, I mean, he's not here right now, but.
He did say he could.
Jeremy is going to be joining us shortly. He's wrapping up a couple of things. So if we get to the budget, we may wish to move ahead to approving items over 2,500, just so we can do some of that until he's able to join us.
It's a great idea.
Okay, great. Then I think it makes sense for Jackie to go now.
Hi, thank you. I always appreciate going first. Actually, that never happens. So this is a truly special occasion. For those who don't know me, I'm Jackie Papadopoulos. I am the chair of Friends of Jones this year. I wanted to thank the LSE for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak this evening. And I just have a statement that I'd like to read to clarify some things that I've heard at some of the meetings that have come up. So at the LSE meeting on May 17th, the state of the FOJ budget was misrepresented. While the LSC doesn't have jurisdiction over the FOJ budget per our bylaws and our 501c3 structure, we feel it's important to correct this misstatement. It was stated that there's currently a $387,000 surplus, and this number is not a surplus. This is the cash balance that was on hand April 30th, 2021. While this amount reflected the cash balance as of April 30th, it does not properly reflect our current or projected end of fiscal year cash balance. We want it to be clear that 1, there are grants that have been approved of and are pending payment, which brings this total down. And 2, additional funds are needed to cover costs so that FOJ can pay for the things that we incur annually over the summer. To ensure that Jones can provide events like Freshman Connections, FOJ carries over funds from one fiscal year to the next. This year is no exception. And in fact, because we've seen a 44% decrease in our level of revenue this year, we're entering next year's fiscal year slightly lower than is typical. Our anticipated balance will be approximately $172,000. We do anticipate that next year's revenue will be higher than this year's, but we don't predict that it will fully rebound to pre-pandemic levels. FOJ is carefully reviewing our budget and fundraising practices for the 2021-22 school year to ensure that we maintain our cash balance at a point where we can administer grants at the same levels that we have in previous years. We invite anyone to attend our FOJ budget meeting, which takes place in the fall. At this meeting, we review the audited financials, and we post these meeting details on our website, our Facebook page, and Instagram. This statement will be submitted in written form to Sarah Ma. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Jackie. That is very helpful information. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'll own that misrepresentation of the amount because I just got that, as she said, that is just their cash balance. I didn't obviously ask them what their actual balance was, so I apologize. And I'll like I said, I'll own that for sure. Thank you, Jackie.
I appreciate that clarification. You weren't the only person that had that budgeted amount in mind. So there were other people on the LSC that also stated that amount.
Yeah, we had it in our spreadsheet. We would love to have someone from Friends of Jones every month to come and tell us what's being covered by Friends of Jones. It really needs to be a collaborative relationship because as we try to figure out what we want to spend money on as the LSC, if stuff is being covered by Friends of Jones, that's something that we don't need to cover. And I think we've had a couple of us have met with the CPS audit department. It seems like there's some procedures that the school should be doing in general to track awards. And that would be helpful bookkeeping for us to be in the loop as well. And I think that would make it easier to know as well as we go ahead. And especially with the shortfall in rental income, there has been a big chunk of money spent this year that was Friends of Jones raised. I mean, it was already in the internal accounts, but it was definitely from fundraising in the past. So, and it has gone to positions. So this is it really needs to be a collaborative process so that we can figure out what we can afford as a school and what our priorities are and what we can cover in different ways.
I appreciate that feedback and that comment. The delineation between FOJ and the LSC and Jones College Prep is really clear. I invite you to read our bylaws, which are available on our website. I think we, in general, give quite a bit of money every single year for a variety of things, which have been mentioned time and time again. I think Ms. Martinsek, you mentioned at the meeting on Monday that, a large portion of the things that we fund are things that are not funded through CPS because they're not through CPS vendors. And, we do that as a way to ensure that the staff, the departments at the school don't need to worry about whether or not, they're going to wait for CPS to approve something. And I think, as Jeremy mentioned the other day on Monday, that, it's very fluid with CPS, whether or not something is an approved vendor and then isn't the following year. So we take away that portion of, the worry, and really give the staff the autonomy to say, like, this is what we need. I think that Dr. Powers, that we meet with him every month before we have our board meeting to go over the grants that are being submitted and voted on as a board. And there have definitely been times when we've presented a grant to him where he has said, nope, this is not an FOJ situation. And it just, every once in a while, a grant just kind of makes it to our desk. It does not happen very often. That is a grant that should not be presented to the board for a vote, because it's something that is the responsibility of Jones, or the department itself can be in charge of that. So I think that, from that perspective, we operate pretty much exactly how we say we do. And, we're the other things that we fund at school are things that eliminate some of the financial burden of the rest of the families at our school. And that's definitely something that we have been addressing, some equity issues that we've been addressing with the funding of the SAT prep that was mentioned at the meeting last week. That was a pilot program that we did this year. And it's our intention to at least double that next year, depending on, what our own financial resources are. So that's, just basically the way that our funding services work. And if people have questions, I encourage them to come to our board meetings. They're published and open to the public. And if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Great. I think some of this information can be transferred to us through Dr. Powers, so that it doesn't necessarily have to be a burden on the Friends of Jones to do it, to know what grants are being made. And yeah, I think that will be helpful. Anyone else? Ellen, want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Jackie, for giving the update from FOJ, and I definitely appreciate the fact that FOJ is very receptive to grants from teachers in various departments. I think I've had difficulty attending FOJ board meetings in the past, just as a teacher. I think that they're during school hours.
Work.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You're not missing something. We do. I just want to address that very briefly. We've actually done an interest survey this year to determine if there is a better time to meet. And that was something that was really important when I took over as president. I definitely had a lot of interest in people who served on the board, who worked and specifically were educators. I, at the time, was not working. I currently, I'm a school social worker, so I'm in the same boat, and I'm fortunate to be able to arrange my schedule that I'm not seeing students when I have FOJ board meetings. But I definitely appreciate the fact that, it's challenging for working people, particularly in schools, who don't have the flexibility. So I'm sorry to cut you off if you had something else to say.
Oh no, I was just going to bring up the meeting time and just say, in general, I'm not sure if there's ever a situation where FOJ would need more of a teacher's statement in support of a grant. So just trying to figure out, maybe there's some logistics that we could work out that could make that happen at a time outside of school hours. I just kind of wanted to ask if that's a possibility, and then also thank you for updating us.
So we have had in the past, when we have had grants come in from departments or teachers, we have had them, Dr. Powers has graciously allowed them to come to our board meeting. And our board meetings really only last 1 hour. That's my goal. I know everybody is busy. So when we have a teacher who feels like they want to give more information about their grant or answer questions, we have that happen first, just out of, or, within the bounds of what would be best for that teacher's schedule, typically would be going first. So, that being said, we do absolutely everything in our power. If we have questions when we receive a grant, we reach out, we get our questions answered, as best as we can. Obviously, we can't predict if specific board members have thought of something or looked at something in a different way. That would mean, we needed more information. But in the event that happened, we would reach back out to the teacher and we would just hold a vote outside of our typically scheduled board meeting so that it wouldn't need to go the entire month. We really recognize that most of the time when teachers are submitting grants, it's quite timely. And so, if teachers have paid for something out of their own pockets, the last thing we want is for them to go 2 months without getting reimbursed. And so we try to really respect that. And, we understand that you deserve to, be reimbursed as soon as possible. But I will definitely continue to share the plight of, the working teacher. And, right now our survey is still showing that of the people that responded to our survey was that this Thursday 8 a.m. meeting was the best time for everybody. I'm not really sure why, but that was the response. And it's something that we, as our board shifts, we will continue to explore.
Thanks. One thing that definitely came up in our discussion on Monday is that the software costs, even though they will have to basically go through internal accounts and go through CPS next year, because they can only be spent on CPS vendors going forward after July 1st. That is likely to be something that we would, the school would still love to have Friends of Jones support. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. And if that was mostly done as a convenience thing, because it makes it more flexible for getting the software licenses, then maybe that's something should be discussed, and and will end up having to be something that is only in the internal accounts budget. But yeah, like the protocols on that will be very different after July 1st. So the flexibility won't be there anymore.
I did hear that at the meeting on Monday, and I think it's really unfortunate. But that being said, I think that when we have conversations, then these are things that can be discussed. So we're not shutting anything down, but we still have to operate within like the fidelity of FOJ and our grant process.
Great. Thanks so much. I don't know if we may have actual further questions later this meeting. If you or Michelle or Monica could stay on, that might be helpful if someone can.
So I actually am going to, Roberto, did you have a question?
Oops, sorry.
Sorry, I just popped up.
Oh, it's okay. So, Jackie, just to clarify something. So the information that I was one of the members who referenced the $300,000. That was on a spreadsheet that was provided to all of the LLC members as far as the budget. So that's where I'm getting that figure. And it sounds like that's incorrect or that's inaccurate information. The other thing I do want to point out, like this is a partnership, right, with the LLC and managing the school budget or supporting the school budget and the Friends of Jones. One of the things that we've learned, well, it's not new to me, but through the finance department, any organization that is raising any funds in the name of the school or with or for the school or on the benefit or for the benefit of the school or using the school's intellectual properties. So that means their logo, and then that is considered under our jurisdiction. And we can have a conversation about that. I absolutely believe that FOJ does have an important role of supporting every student. And we can absolutely have a three-way conversation between members on this LLC the board members of the Friends of Jones, and the Chicago Public School Department of Finance. But that is the policy. So if you are using any of Jones's intellectual property, then it does fall under our jurisdiction.
Well, I would be happy to have that conversation. And, we can certainly take a look at the policy that you are pointing out. If you could send it to me, that would be wonderful. I don't obviously have that. Again, I refer you to our bylaws. We are a separate 501c3 organization. And, like I said, I would be happy to have that conversation with CPS and the LSE and the members of the FOJ board.
Great, thanks, Roberto. Thanks, Jackie. I think that is a longer conversation, and it's just generally part of the procedures and transparency that the LSE is catching up with that may not have been in place in the past.
To address your previous comment about whether or not Monica or Michelle would be able to stay on, I'd really like to respect their time and the time that they have with their families. And so, if you have questions for them or just questions in general, you can just go ahead and email us. That would be fine.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Voigt is here now. Do we want to just to do the approvals over 2,500 then? I think makes sense. So to jump to that, which is 6A.
Okay, so I think I have them all. Do you want me to share them on my screen? Or should I just read about them? All right, sorry. It's this, am I sharing or just reading? Oh yeah, I'll just read about them because a lot of them we talked about them. Okay, so one is the chemistry books. Those are the same price, $14,333.25. Then we have the English books, $4,190.30. And then it looks like Jeremy was able to get a much better quote for the National Geographic books, and that came out to $34,002.15. So he was able to get a bunch of freebies. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy.
Yeah, essentially going through the actual publisher allowed us to basically get the text with all of the things included, which works out better because then they have more copies of the ebook and their MindTap and everything as well. I think that's what it's called, MindTap.
And these are all in the public folder under this meeting, if you just wanted to look at them. So I did, based on that quote that was sent over, adjust the budget textbook line. We can talk about that too. And then there was a new quote from the choir teacher. I'm sorry, she and I had a good back and forth because I like music. So, but that's for $2,613.75. It's for a wall-mounted television, and she and I had a conversation about projectors, and she has a screen and everything, and we talked about smart boards. But this is the app. This will meet her needs the best, and this includes the wall mount. It doesn't include the installation. She's already earmarked some money for installation, but that's not part of this. So that's $2,613.75. And then there's a new one, and this one I'll put it in the chat because I want. We got this a little bit later, and I'm not sure anyone had time to look at it, so I'm throwing this in there. It is for girls soccer apparel for $4,294. And so this is from the girls soccer account. So can I guess my question is, does this have, they have that money in their budget, Jeremy?
I can check right now, but I'm pretty sure they do. I know he has some money on the way as well.
Okay, because this is related to, there was a GoFundMe for Jones Girls Soccer that I had put in that super long email. I apologize. And we can't do GoFundMes legally. So I just want to,
Well, actually, Sarah, sorry to interrupt you. You
Yeah.
can do them now, but they're just treated like the same way as other fundraisers in terms of like bring it to the school, fill out a fundraising application, the LSC approves it, like that. So
Okay.
it is in the newest version of the like guide to internal accounts manual thing. So they've added that.
okay, so I didn't realize that. A lot of times, friends of organizations don't like, yes.
His current balance is at $5,072.15.
Okay, so there's enough in that line item to cover that. I was just going to mention that sometimes friends of orgs do not like GoFundMe's because it competes with their own fundraising, and additionally, the funds, if you donate to a 501c3, you can write that off on your taxes. So okay, so in the future, everyone who is watching, and then potentially we need to communicate this better, is those fundraisers have to be approved. And so again, like this is the money from their line item. So I'm not assuming that, I don't know what's going to happen with that GoFundMe money. There's nothing I want to do about it now. So that's for $4,294. So those are the 5 things. All right, Cassie, are we prepared to approve the books?
I'm not sure what there is supposedly some money that I think Mr. Boyd can cover it, like that if there is some money like 115 that can be used towards the books and it needs to be used, then it makes sense to do it. If everyone's comfortable with that book, we only have 2 choices, and so it kind of makes sense to choose one of them.
I can jump in if it's all right. There was potentially some money I was looking into today from the sub funds, but after more investigating, that it is not possible to use that money. So there's very little left. Might be able to buy the English novels before the end of the fiscal year, but the other 2 larger ones would not happen. It's up to you guys. I think there's enough time after July 1 to still get them in place before the first day of school. So that was the only reason I was presenting it now, is in case we need to, but there's definitely not enough time to move internal accounts money to a budget line and get those books ordered before Friday. That won't happen.
Yeah, if we didn't need to do the textbook today, then I think that's fine not to do that. And if it's not going to make a difference in spending down fiscal year $21.
And so you're suggesting we would approve that in June?
Yeah, so we could even do it June 1st. So I think I feel more comfortable with that.
Okay, so we'll approve the girls soccer apparel, the television, the English novels, and the chemistry book. That's what we're doing? Okay, so I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to actually make the motion and read the amount. So just give me a second to make the motion, and then someone can second it. So I make a motion to approve the purchase of AP Chemistry textbooks for $14,330.25. To approve the English department book order of $4,190.30. To approve the purchase of a television for the choir room for $2,613.75, and to approve the check requisition for girls soccer apparel for $4,294. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, Mr. Hernandez seconded. Oh, my minutes are hot.
Elaine is here, Sarah, if you want to add her to the roll.
Who is?
Elaine.
Okay, 6:30. Okay, hold on, I'll call roll in a second. 630. Okay, 2500. Usually I pre-write all this stuff. Okay, so this is to vote on those approvals. Boyd,
Yay.
Trina Prado,
Yay.
Cresswell,
Yay.
Hernandez,
Yay.
Hillbrands. I know he's at the baseball game. Troy? Okay, I'll skip Troy. Ma is a yay. Martinsek?
A yay, and don't forget Bugs.
I know, I got her. I got her in my. Menjivar?
Yay.
Powers?
Yay.
You skipped me again.
Oh, you know why? It's because these are old. MacArthur.
Yes.
Okay. Powers?
Yay.
Zen?
Yes.
And then Miss Bugs, did you want to vote on that? I know you just joined.
I read the notes. Yay.
Thank you.
Oops. I think Troy is gesturing.
Hi, Troy. That's a yay. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Hillbrands. And apologies for anyone who was left out. I think I got everyone now. I'm working on old lists. And the motion was approved. Okay.
Thanks. We don't have budget transfers. We don't have fundraisers. I would like to cover this new business now. I think we basically covered it, but basically external fundraisers, everyone should familiarize themselves with that section in the LSC resource guide. Really, pretty much any fundraising that's done at the school or in the school's name, whether for the school or not for the school, should be going through the LSC. And so probably we should just put something together to make all of this clear and make the procedures clear. And that would be helpful for student groups and for parents. And I think it would be helpful for us. So for example, we have this athletics budget and what sports are being asked to fundraise on their own versus not. You know, I think in terms of an equity issue, it is helpful for us to know, you know, the funding of these things. So yes, that's my recommendation as chair. And I think it's not something that we need to solve at this meeting or take action on, but I think making sure that we have some clear materials on this and we can even put it on the LSC page, I think that would be helpful. Okay. Anyone have any other thoughts on that or questions? I can send some of the information that's relevant to this around. There is a CPS approved fundraising form. Yes. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for Dr. Powers as it relates to fundraising for activities such as cheerleading. I'm wondering if there's a protocol expectation whereby the athletic director or administrators are aware when students are asked to raise funds?
The answer to that is emphatically yes. Any fundraising activities, I think this GoFundMe business is something that kind of slipped past everyone because it is new, and there are things that have popped up where students have initiated them, or perhaps the sponsor has. But any of the sponsors or coaches need to know and communicate with their students that any fundraising they do has to be approved by the school, and any fundraising that involves an outside organization, meaning money will change hands to, let's say, raise money for a charity or something like that, or a certain percentage goes to that organization and a certain percentage comes to the school. Those all have to be approved at the LSC level.
Okay, in terms of at the building level, Are there any checks or balances or accountability? I'm speaking for a personal situation because there was a fundraiser where cheerleaders were asked
Mhm.
to raise funds. They've not been used, and
We're trying
I
to get that one straightened out.
okay, because I haven't heard anything back from
No,
them.
I'm sorry, and I did
from
get
them.
your message the other day, and it's just
Yeah.
we've had with the budget and everything, we haven't had a chance to dissect all of that. But we're aware of it. I've spoken with Mr. Grissetto and also with Jeremy, and we're trying to get that whole thing resolved. And then hopefully that'll be the last time we have, something like that, where money was raised without our knowledge, and then potentially has to be dispersed back to the people who made the donations, if at all possible, unless people choose to let it carry over for the following year.
Okay, I felt as though the communication could have been improved in terms of informing parents, putting them in on it or what the status is. And then a couple of weeks ago, I actually had a conference with him and I didn't hear anything back with my follow-up email. So I do appreciate you addressing that today because I didn't know what the status was. Thank you.
We'll try and get this resolved as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think like having some of this stuff clear with the LSC will, and whatever we can do to support making this very clear about how to fundraise at the school will help going forward too. Yes, so I think that is all the items except for the big one, number 4. But oh, sorry, I read this chat covers up the hands. Go ahead, Ellen.
No worries. The GoFundMe kind of raised a question that I think has been brought up previously about the athletic department budget and allocations to different teams, specifically boys and girls teams. So I was wondering, is there like clear delineation there? I know within the science department, like we try to pay really close attention to like bio team, chemistry team, physics team, like receiving the resources that they need without like disproportionate allocations. So just like noticing that this is particularly for girls soccer and just like noticing a couple of disparities in the past, I was wondering, is that how this department's budget is organized to our knowledge? Wanted to kind of bring that up because it's come up before.
I can speak to that at least briefly. In terms of equity between male and female sports, we are very much closely under the Title IX provisions for that. We've had basically have to undergo review of that on an annual basis. And where there is a difference is if a team wishes to make a change, say in a uniform or some other kind of equipment that is not typically covered by the school, because some teams, their uniforms are used for several years. Others, because of the nature of the sport, they're annually replaced. So we try to maintain as low an impact on fundraising as possible, but it's just not possible to actually have enough budgeted funds to cover absolutely everything that a team may wish to have. We try to focus on what the teams actually do need, as the fundamentals, and that's where the main support comes from. But we're very mindful of making sure we have equity with regard to relative support of the different teams, especially male and female teams.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Dr. Powers. I think this is also where, having like grant award letters and receipts of donations tracked would be helpful for the LSC. And that way we know what is being supported separately, what's being supported through individual organization fundraisers, and then what we're covering by internal accounts.
And if I could just add real quickly, the largest single sports-related grants we receive from the LSC are for transportation. This year was not a big issue, obviously, but next year we will return to having to get fairly significant donations from LSC just to provide transportation for our students, for athletics.
Yep. Okay, I think we are ready to move on to number 4, the budget discussion again. Sarah, do you want to take the lead on that? I
guess I'm curious if we heard anything about about the appeal, and then we can get to the section questions.
I can respond to that, but unfortunately not in a positive way. We were not granted the appeal. There were two possible ways this could have been done. One is a program support, which would essentially have been cash. The other was to keep down, if there's overcrowding in classrooms, keep those numbers under control, and we did not qualify in that area as well. I have been informed that there will be a revisiting of our application after the budgets have been submitted. There could be other ways in which we would receive support. One way is if we might receive additional overtime to pick up additional single sections for teachers. We at this particular time are anticipating 2 additional sections. Pardon me. Had a cough drop. Forgive me. I don't want to swallow it in the middle of the meeting. It might be bad form. In any event, the 2 are, one is in English. If our English department chair receives a position that she's being considered for, and that is a person who will serve as a professional development specialist for advanced placement capstone, and that would be paid for by CPS. So in other words, we would have someone teach a 6th class, and that would be covered by CPS if that is necessary. And then the other is we do have definitely the need for 1 period additional overtime in science. Those are our numbers as they stand now. And again, with the science, it remains to be determined which subject and as a result, which teacher. So that's going to vary somewhat in terms of the cost. But apart from that, those are probably the only supports we can potentially look forward to. There was one other, and that is the possibility that if after everything is said and done, after we have the budget passed and after we start the implementation of it, we find ourselves in additional financial issues, we can then again float that past them for some possible support through that program support process. However, at this time, the answer is we're getting nothing. Long story short.
Well, at least you have an answer.
Yes, we do.
So
We got that at 5:10 this afternoon, so.
Nothing like those 5 p.m. Okay, well, that's so great. That's terrible. Okay, so I guess I'm just for the public record, I'm going to just discuss a few things that I asked in email and were answered. One.
Sarah, Jeremy has his.
Oh yes, Jeremy,
hand
please.
raised.
I just want to mention, whenever you're ready, Sarah, to show it, there was one more thing I had to send to you because we're playing catch up here trying to get stuff. So it was just emailed to you in the last half hour, but eventually when we talk about CPS budget stuff, that will have to get presented. That was it.
You emailed it to my Sarah Ma too?
I think so. Let me double check.
What? Okay, I thought I forwarded everything. Maybe I just, was it a?
This was like during the meeting at 6:20.
Oh no, I don't have anything new. Let me refresh. Oh, there it is. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. I'm having a great day today. Let's pull this up. Hi. Okay. Should I present this? Would you like to talk about it?
We can do so if you put it up, Jeremy, and I can do so.
Oh, I got it. I can put it up right now. Oh, to the window. Oh gosh. Oh, it's Chrome. Okay, sorry, I'm so used to not Chrome. If you have it up faster than I can get it up. Let me see, maybe. Okay.
I can open from my desktop and share if you want.
I can share. It's yeah. Let me hold on. I just don't. Okay, I'll just do it this way. Oh, a tab. I want to do a tab. Come on, you can do it. Here we go. Okay. Did you see that? And if you minimize your people, it will be bigger.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah, can I? Yeah. What if I do this? I should just put this in the chat too. I mean, that doesn't do anything, does it? No.
Oh, my mic clear, but not enough.
It's because it's a PDF.
Do you want me to try and present?
Yes.
Will it be any better?
Chrome doesn't let me, Google Meet doesn't let me present like an attachment. If it's a PDF, like it only does these tabs. And so if I download it, it doesn't let me do it. So I don't know if that's better for other people.
Is that better?
It's better? Okay.
It's larger. And we can go through this, and I have the numbers in front of me here in case it's a little unclear on the screen.
Okay, sorry about that.
Jeremy and I can go through this with you. What we're doing here is looking at our student-based budgeting and anything else that's in the 115 account. This is what has to be balanced to be submitted by noon tomorrow for the FY22 budget. What we're looking at here are changes that we are making or are estimating to be made. For example, the first 4 things you see there in blue are all positions that became vacant. And the difference between the salaries of the people who are vacating those positions and the salaries we estimate are going to be for the people replacing them. We use a standard lane 2, step 2 when estimating. But for example, you'll notice on the third one down, it is lane 1, step 1. As a matter of fact, that's because this is a temporary assigned teacher who is filling that position for next year as a regular teacher. So we had a little bit of a savings there with that particular position. The others are estimated savings, or differences, I should say, replacing people who are leaving. If you get to, and again, we're filling all 4 of those positions. That is our plan at this time. You get down to the next section, which is in a kind of a salmon color. I'm not sure where that color came from. We are replacing Mrs. Terry, who's retiring, with Miss Yang, who has been a part-time teacher for us. That is a considerable savings based on longevity and seniority differences. The position being vacated by Miss Yang is being filled by another part-time teacher that we're ready to submit very shortly. We've already completed the process for that. And then finally, we are reopening a 0.5, a half-time ESL teacher. This is because, as you note in the comments section, that previously was covered by a special supplemental payment from CPS. Now it's us that have to pay for it. So we picked up that half position and we shared that teacher with Whitney Young High School. So we're picking up that one, which we were not paying for out of our SBB or 115 funds previously. Now you get down to the green section here. These are positions that are going to be closed, at least for the time being. The first is a full-time English position. This is the teacher who is transferring over to our diverse learners department, Mr. Kavalauskas, and so his salary will be covered there by CPS through ODLSS and through the enrollment numbers and the numbers of sections that we needed and so forth. And we've reached agreement that we do not need that position for next year. So we're closing that position entirely for a difference of $98,000. We're going to close an administrative position and reopen after July 1, either through one source or another, depending on which resources we have most readily available. It is most likely to be filled in one way or another through some of the supplemental funds we're receiving for next year. And finally, we are closing one support staff position and not planning to reopen that unless some other position comes open due to retirement or resignation or whatever it might be. So that leaves us with a difference made up. The original starting deficit was 358,000. That leaves us with about 389,000. And these are estimated figures, remember. Jeremy, do you want to address the surplus issue, the range that might be?
Yeah, so these, sorry, it's going to be echoey with me having two screens. Is there an echo for you?
It's clear.
Yeah, you could
Okay.
just mute the other one.
It is.
Oh, okay.
So-
Oh, it's a speaker.
Yeah. Let me see here. The top two numbers, the negative 30, 358, 357 is what we had showing as our negative basically on day one when Hyperion opened. The 15.2 is the positive in the SA amount. And those totals are there basically to show you what we've been trying to catch up on, what we're trying to clear. Hyperion changes stuff, you know, the lanes and steps, like Ms. Ma and I were just discussing today that one number changed based on, I think the 1, 2, 4 positions got looked at and they said, oh, these have to change a lane or step next year based on contracts, lots of different stuff. So it's always kind of changing. The reason I'm saying all this is showing a surplus of 46,000 going to a supply line. And I'm trying to look at my totals as they actually are updating this minute. And I think it's going to be more like 35,000 will be the actual amount we're left with extra. And that would go toward a supply line, basically because you have to put it somewhere in order for it to be a zero at the end of the day.
So the bottom line is we will have a small surplus in 115 funds once we have completed all this process. And again, that does give us a slight margin should some of those adjustments that you see for some of those positions be somewhat different. But for example, we're again using lane 2, step 2, which is pretty much an average for coming in. If we bring in one or more teachers who are say with just a bachelor's degree or have no prior experience, then obviously the difference will be slightly greater.
Ellen, did you have your hand up first? My question was just the admin positions that the ADF funds were planning to use for that.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, and that's we're allowed to use those for that.
Yes, we are. We're allowed to use the ADF funds at least in part
Yes.
for a person in position. Yes.
And then
Entirety, because we want to make sure we have program funds available as well, and that still would leave us with a pretty generous amount of program funding for example, for paying outside sources or that type of thing.
you'd still have $100,000.
Approximately 100,000, yeah.
And that would not be the OST money.
No,
So you'd still have the OST money, which I would. I mean, I know we don't want to. I just really want to make sure that extra 100 from the ADF is really for SEL supports.
That is entirely the intention of it. Yes.
And is it a plan to put the plan together over the summer as you have time? Okay.
Yes. And the OST funding, and again, at least we've received some guidance on that. What we're probably going to be doing there is we may be using a portion of that for some of our summer programming for students. For example, we do have a considerable number, I mentioned this before, of additional students with IEPs. So anything we can do during the summer to provide those students, for example, with some additional orientation, some different things that will help kind of get them on a sound footing, we may be able to draw from some of the OST funds. But otherwise, it'll be primarily during the school year.
And I was at another meeting last night for a different school, and that principal thought that those OST funds might be for 2 years. So
I believe that may have been. I don't think the ADF is,
Right.
because that's intended truly to come out of SEL issues coming out of the pandemic. whereas the OST, I think is a little bit more longer term, but probably just 2 years at the most. But again, those will be program funds as opposed to personnel funds.
Right.
They're,
Can you,
they're certainly welcome to have. There is some personnel, there are some stipends in there, $1,000 stipends, I believe 3 of them for faculty members or other staff members to actively engage in some leadership or management of the programming to help pay for some of their outside time.
and I'll save my question and I'll let Ellen go.
Okay, either way is fine though. Like I have my question written down. I did have kind of 2 questions. So Dr. Powers, it sounded like the appeal may potentially cover an additional section of English to be taught, given the potential like change for the department chairs. Is that included in this when we like look at the section numbers and things?
Okay. Ellen, I'm glad you mentioned that because, and again, this is something that I think Sarah would be addressing with some of the feedback that we provided today. At this point, we're not looking to change the arrangement for the release period for department chairs. It may not be possible for every department, given the need for some departments to have everyone teaching to be able to cover it, but we're going to look at those as well. We may be looking at some, we've already had that situation previously where like one department, look, everybody has to teach, so we'll come up with another way to provide the time for attending ILT meetings, for example, and that type of thing. But otherwise, primarily, there's not going to be any change in that regard. So the department chairs will continue to have their release period for next year.
Thank you for confirming that. I really appreciate that. I did see that in the email earlier. I was asking actually specifically about the English department chair who may be like working with that CPS.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you then.
You're fine, no worries. It was a specific English question because I see that one of the English positions is not planned for replacement at this time, but you had mentioned that potentially the appeal might fund overtime funding for a section of English.
Well, it turns out we're not going to need an additional section of English. The only one we would potentially need right now would be to cover a position that Ms. Miller would not be able to teach. And again, we're not funding that. It would be funded by the Advanced Placement Office for CPS.
Okay.
So right now, we only have one overtime position in terms of a teaching period that we are looking at that we're going to need to fund unless there are some significant shifts in enrollment, which we're not anticipating, but that would be the one for science.
Yeah, no, I think my department has started to like broach the topic. I did have one further question, and I saw this in the email thread from earlier today about, are there additional teaching positions that have periods off associated with their duties? But I do think that both for journalism, the newspaper, and for yearbook, that is contractually allocated. I don't know if that's like shown in this section figures or not at this time.
That's a little bit of a gray area because what we have done in the case of yearbook, for example, is provide a stipend rather than a release period because it's done as a club after school and essentially the work is all done by the students. The newspaper is another matter. We're still trying to work out how we might be able to do that, but we have actually, as far as I know, we have already got everything set to where it complies with that particular stipulation.
Yeah, I just wanted to check about yearbook because I could see it for journalism in the section numbers that were shared because I saw it was like one section, but allocated as 2 because of that contractual obligation. But I think that the yearbook wasn't in that section.
No, yearbook wasn't because it's being done as an after-school club and we're providing a stipend.
Okay, I just wasn't sure about that because my understanding of the contract is it's a period off, but I might be missing.
Well, it is and it isn't. The wording of the contract is a little bit ambivalent in the sense of if the principal, for example, stipulates a certain schedule that has to be met or a certain number of issues given and things like that. We have tried to do that, in terms of providing that release period, but at the same time, those particular contract provisions were created back at a time when I did yearbooks, which was no computers. Everything was done on paper sheets and marked out. It was very labor intensive and very time consuming. and the current circumstances have changed considerably. But again, we're trying our best to make sure we can keep that kind of programming going and get the proper support for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm
Sure.
sorry, I have one last question. I know, Sarah, you have a couple. If it's a stipended position, is that a budget line somewhere that we should see? I know that in general, CTU also has like club sponsorship stipends.
That's where we do it, is through the clubs and organizations.
Okay. I'll have to look at that again. Thank you so much.
But that's not reflected in this information here.
Okay.
For one thing, it's very fluid. Depending on which clubs we have, who is active, who is not, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, my question was just about the capstone class and how that would affect it. And then for science, then that additional period for that teacher or additional section is paid as overtime. Is that how that works?
It's paid as overtime. And if indeed what I was told earlier today is a possibility, it's conceivable they could give us additional overtime for that to cover that position. If not, we'll have to cover it. And again, the exact amount very much depends on who the teacher is. And that will depend on which subject we have to split out. And we haven't quite gotten to that yet. At least I don't think so.
I think if they're willing to cover overtime, let's make it the most expensive teacher.
Well, it has to do with, well, how many
No,
sections
I'm
do you
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But that's a significant change from last year. We had 3 in science and 2 overtime periods in 2 other subject areas. And now we're down to 1. 2 if you have Miss Miller, but again, that's covered by CPS. That one would be.
Go ahead, Roberto.
I want to understand the top 4 lines. The English teacher, the 2 social science teacher, and the science teacher.
Yeah.
These are vacant positions, right? Or are some of them individuals who already indicated that they won't return?
These are all vacant positions for next year, not currently vacant.
Okay, so there is a body that's filling those positions.
Yes, all of those currently somebody is teaching. Yes.
Okay, and they either are retiring, resigning, or moving, and then the plan is to fill those positions with a teacher that may have less experience or time or credentials, which would lower the cost.
That is correct.
To the school. Okay. And then my next question is the admin position.
Yes.
So that is coming from the SBB fund, right? So that admin position, that administrative position, I'm sorry, the administrative position is not the administrative position that we're funding through the internal account. Is that correct?
That is correct. That position is presently funded through 115 funds.
Okay. So then my follow-up question here is, why would we decide to close this position and not review or reassess the position that we're funding through internal accounts? Why wouldn't we do that?
Mr. Menjivar, is primarily in order to come up with a total figure over those 3 positions that approximated the deficit we still had. In other words, we closed the 1 English position, as I explained, and then looked for other positions that we could close for purposes of reopening, and that's where we did the 1 administrative position. So it was just different enough in the amount to get us so we could fully cover the remaining deficit that there was there.
Okay, and just to play out the scenario, right? If for some reason we're unable to fund that administrative position, that's it, it's closed. Right? We won't be able to, so then we are then left with funding the 1 AP that's being funded through the internal account.
There was a
Yeah.
little bit of a garble there. I'm not exactly sure what your question was.
Sure. So for the AP, let's say we can't fund that AP position that we're closing.
Yes,
That's it.
we will be able to,
Okay.
but just
And
not.
you're saying we're going to be able to. You're saying we're going to be able to fund that position
Or fund
through the ADF fund?
Yeah, or fund the equivalent of it.
Okay. And then if we use the ADF fund, right, primarily for the social emotional learning to address this incredible year plus, how we get to decide who's going to fill that position? Like, are we given an opportunity to decide whether that person is, if that individual will meet those demands?
That is a decision that will have to be mine primarily, a decision of the administrative team, because that's an internal assignment of duties and responsibilities, and that falls under my purview.
Okay. Yeah. So let me. I'm just going to express the way I'm feeling right now. So, Dr. Ferry took a position as a principal at Lincoln Elementary, and you had asked whether the budget was going to be in good shape. You had reassured us that there weren't any concerns at that time, and we went on and filled a position, not knowing what the budget was going to be.
Correct.
And that bothers me. It bothers me that we filled that position. And I don't want to harm any individual after an incredible, difficult year. And it just seems like we might have been short-sighted on that. And we could have held off to decide whether we had those funds once we had received the 2021-2022 school year budget. So I think we have to do a better job of just anticipating and playing out various scenarios before we bring in people, and then all of a sudden we're deciding whether we got to keep that position open or close. It's an unfortunate situation to be in. It just is. So that's my frustration.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your feedback.
Ellen, do you have another question?
I do, and I'm sorry. I know I'm monopolizing airtime. I apologize. I'll try to calm it down. So, Dr. Powers, I had just asked about the yearbook stipend. You mentioned it came out of like the club's line item. I just opened up the budget again, and it looks like that got zeroed out for next fiscal year. Is that a different line item? Am I missing something? Because when I see academic clubs, it's at zero for next year.
I think those are academic interscholastic things, but truthfully, not having that in front of me, I don't know.
Okay.
The funds for the stipends we take from internal accounts, and again, it varies considerably. Jeremy, do you have anything you could add to that?
The academic clubs was put together for things like NHS, Science Olympiad, things of that nature. It has nothing to do with the stipends, Ellen.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that clarification.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I wanted to follow up because like as teacher rep, and I'm the one teacher rep on the call right now, and I want to make sure that I'm like speaking for the teachers who have the release period, or as you said, maybe receiving a stipend rather than a release period for their duties. So thank you. I really appreciate that clarification.
Roberto, do you have another question? So Sarah, can you put these new numbers in, which I assume there's not a column right now that reflects those, right?
Well, Jeremy, wouldn't it just balance? Like, we don't get extra money. I mean, we're not going to assume that we're going to take the extra 115, the surplus, and put it in the internal accounts. So, I mean, I know we can use it if we had it, but we wouldn't earmark it in the budget yet.
Are
She,
we speaking about the 46,443 at the bottom and putting that on a?
right, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, yes.
So this, if we're trying to put these numbers into that other spreadsheet, this would go toward that top section where it's the -262. And we would have to, look at all the numbers, and I would suggest doing it tomorrow because like I said, Hyperion is still changing and I'm adjusting things as this meeting's going on to try and make it all green. But the top line would be that grand total, whatever, I'd have to find it here.
Yeah,
know,
I
Sarah, do
mean,
you wanna
I have
switch
it.
to that
Yeah,
one?
yeah, I have all of this. So like, of course I know what CPS gave us. Are you talking about the total expenses of 165 employees?
Correct.
Okay, so that, I mean, I have a number. Would you like me to put a different number in? It's $12,275,077.
Right. So now that number should be. $12,228,392.
That's the money they're giving us? Or that's the
No,
expenses?
Those are the expenses.
Okay, let me,
Nothing's changed with the money they're giving us.
yeah, obviously. Sorry.
And then that small number 11,542 is unchanged as well.
Okay.
Well,
So,
yeah,
yeah, yes, I put it in.
it
And then-
is unchanged, but so that's what I mean. There's still going to be some extra that needs to go into a supply line, and I don't know. Do you want to share your screen now and we can see that?
Sure. I'm so good at sharing my screen. Here we go. Oh, my face is giant on the big, okay. Okay, let's see if I can make this bigger. Oh, how did I do that last time? Does it let me do that? Okay, let me zoom in.
Yeah, so that's what I get as a difference right now from what would be going into supply lines. Essentially, for SA funds that are surplus, which is about 1,080 would be surplus, that has to go into a miscellaneous line because it's SA funds.
Okay,
And then whatever the difference is, 34,000 about, would be going into an SBB line. I chose an instructional materials line so that we have 34,000 or so to work with as soon as it reopens in July, so I can get those books ordered or get whatever I can get ordered.
right. Okay, and so if you're looking at this, again, we're looking at column F. And there's been some adjustments. For example, I had the old number in for the operations manager salary, so that now that's yellow. So that changes a little bit.
Can we use the word cost? Because that's not a salary.
I'm sorry, you're right. It's not a salary. It includes benefits and everything. Yes.
I just don't want people
No,
thinking
yeah.
one thing when it's not.
You're right. Thank you for that correction. But let's go down to the I updated textbooks since there was AP Human Geo textbook is less. I updated that and then I adjusted the miscellaneous book line item to be, approximately 10,000. So we were at a 63,000. So that's a $7,000 savings. And then here we are with the cash flow, potentially helping that cash flow issue. But don't think that that's real money because remember the AP, like we just closed some stuff. So it's just, it's something to the balance, the budget is balanced. And then if we make an approval tonight, I suggest that we just make an overall approval that supersedes anything we did yesterday or whatever day that was, Monday. But before we do that, I did want to talk a little bit about the information that Mr. Hustleton shared. So let's, if there's questions on this.
So of those positions that will not be covered by 115 funds,
These ones.
yeah, is it desirable to keep some of them open? Should we be paying for them out of internal accounts? And if not, why not? And I think some general explanation of why close those and not cover them. It seemed like what we were assuming the other night was that anything that we weren't going to be able to cover in 115 funds, we would just end up covering with internal accounts. So that's my general question. I don't know if it makes more sense to go over and talk about the positions first, or
I think Dr. Powers could talk to that.
Well, one of the positions we're closing is a position we're closing regardless, and that is the one English position. We also have another position that we are probably going to be closing regardless. So that just leaves the administrative position. My thinking here is because we will have access to additional funds after July 1, that we will need to close this position to balance the budget at this particular point, and then reopen when additional funds are available. If we were to fill this position from the remaining balance in internal accounts, I don't see what the running tally is on that, but the last time I looked at it was like 153, and I guess it's a little bit higher than that now, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's only 452 because we took out the assumption that we're covering the 260. So it's still 153, you know.
This would at this point preserve internal accounts funds, which we may very well be needing soon, again, especially prior to any resumption of income that we have and the receipt or starting to receive student fees. So this gives us a little bit more of a foundation. And again, we will have, starting July 1, almost $400,000 available to us, the ADF and the OST. And utilizing the ADF to reopen a position, I think will be a judicious use of those funds available, at least in the short term, i.e. for FY22. We're not looking at a long-term solution to that particular thing. The long-term solution is either CPS gives us more money or we earn more money. And I think only the latter is going to be the case.
And I think Cassie was asking, why wouldn't you close, and I think I know the answer, but I'd rather have you guys answer it. It's why wouldn't you close the AP, that position that you're paying out of internal accounts, and reopen that?
Well, again, Jeremy, maybe you can help me explain this better. It was to reach a particular figure.
No, I
and there
know.
was a difference between those.
It won't help us. We only have so much from CPS, so we have to close those positions with CPS. They won't move money over from our internal accounts to help us balance our budget. So it doesn't matter who's in. I mean, it will be the individuals that are in those positions are sort of irrelevant. We can fund one position, or we can fund the position however we want in internal accounts, but for CPS, that money is a done deal. It's that top line that you've got. And so the position has to be closed within those CPS funds. I don't know if that answers it or makes it more clear.
So the English position is closing for good, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't need for enrollment. The administrative position would be reopened with the ADF funds because we can use ADF funds for that.
Yes.
And then the support staff, is that closed for good, or we're doing that in internal accounts?
We're looking at that, closing that for good, at least for the time being. In other words, circumstances could change, but at this point, we're using that as a position we can close.
When you say support staff, is this is this a position that's in the office or a position? Yeah, what does support staff mean?
It's a non-instructional position.
Okay. And then, Jeremy, It was under my impression and Sarah that we were going to cover that $256,000 shortfall in the SBB fund, right? Or whatever the amount was. But it sounds like through the internal accounts, but it sounds like we couldn't even do that. We can't do that. Is that correct?
That's not an option. It would have been an option if CPS had given us more money, but they don't do that. They may have given us more positions, which is what we were hoping for, 1 year temporary positions. They denied that as well. So then all we can do is close other positions to balance it out. We cannot move money from our internal accounts over. We can close those positions in SVB and reopen them in internal accounts. So now we're funding 6 positions, or I don't know what it works out to be, 5 positions instead of 3, but we can't afford that. So our best hope was this appeal.
Yeah, and you don't want to afford that, because then if something were to change in SBB, like teachers retire or whatever, and you get extra money, you don't get that money back.
So Sarah, that's my problem. Is like we're paying for an extra AP, and you're just telling me we can't afford to fund an English teacher or a science teacher or a social studies teacher, right? So if we can't afford a teacher in the classroom, we can't afford an AP.
That's not what we're saying, Mr. Menjivar. We're funding all of these teaching positions with exception of one which is not needed. In other words, there's no point in having that position filled if it is not needed, and it is not. And we will reopen that one administrative position after July 1 when those funds are available to us, but they're not available to us now. And as we move forward into the future, if we have a base from which to work with our internal accounts funds, and then begin building upon that, then some of these things will be able to cover in the future. But right now, in order to make this balance, we had to cut the English position, again, unnecessary. We cut an internal accounts position, or a support staff position, again, one that we could do that with, and then shift the funding of the one administrative position until such time as other funds are available to us. But we're not losing any teaching positions that are needed.
Well, I think this is a good point to have Mr. Heselton talk about positions and sections, and that's actually very relevant to this discussion. So we can move on over to that.
Yeah, and this is a very big sheet, so I'll put this in the chat and then move around with when people have questions. Mr. Heselton, he's on the call, but I'm not sure if he's able to talk about it.
I am here.
Great. Maybe, Mr. Heselton, can you just walk us through, since this is the first time many of us have seen this, and maybe talk to the question that you answered to me about AP Human Geo, and just give us a little background on how your work as a scheduler works.
Okay, so I'll start where you are with we'll go through the areas you see English there. So with the scheduling, we get all of our requests from our current freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. And so all of the sophomore, junior, senior class numbers are relatively set based upon kids requesting course changes later, but those are relatively set. Our freshman numbers, we have an approximation of how many freshmen are coming in, and it's going to be somewhere between 460, 475, 480. We put 475 because that's the number that's budgeted for in the student-based budgeting, I believe, to get us to that 1970 number. So in English here, if we look at that there, it just says 475 in the level 1. some of those kids might be in level 2 coming in from academic centers. Once again, we don't have all of their data. It takes a month or so to scroll in, but we have those numbers. So there's approximately 17 sections of classes required to cover the incoming freshmen in English. And there is some fluidity between 1 and 2 in what those section numbers are, because we don't know where they are until we get all of the information. If you want to scroll down to the next one.
Can I just ask a clarifying question why we're on the English?
Yep.
So for example, American literature, or no, let's pick okay, so Asian American literature, you have actually 2 sections, it says.
Yep.
So would that be 31 kids in each of those classes? Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, and some of the classes, not every kid's schedule works out, because and in general, if 61 or 60, I've done this for about 16 years with the scheduling. If 61 or 62 kids select a class, there's usually 2 or 3 that can't get into the class because they have conflicts with, like, they have 3 or 4 other unique classes on their schedule. And so it's not an exact science. This is projections. Some of those students may end up in other classes based on not being able to be in that class.
Sounds good. I'll move to social science.
Yep. So if you look there, you can see that under AP Human Geo, there's no students listed, and that's not that there's no students. And then World Studies, there's 475. Those are the 2 freshman classes that basically exclusively have freshmen. We may end up with 6 sections of one, 11 sections of the other, 7 and 9. Like, it's just once again, that just depends on where the kids select to be, but we can count on having or requiring 17 sections approximately for freshmen, because they can only take those 2 classes coming in. We may have, and there's a couple of freshmen sometimes that have it, but then that number is generally irrelevant in changing other section numbers. So we need 17 sections of AP Human Geo and World Studies. AP Human Geo is not disappeared. It's just, we don't know where they are. It's just a matter of putting in a number because we know we have that number of students.
Thank you. All right, I'll move to science. And if anyone has a question, please.
Science is relatively set. No 8th graders have physics coming in. They all take physics. So this is one that's, we know where they are. That's what they are. If we have 475, we need 17 sections. Like, there's very little movement in the science sections.
And we have a science teacher on the call, so. And then the extra section, we're not sure where that would be, right, at this point? Okay. And that would definitely, the department chair would take that, because they're the only one with, no, not necessarily.
No, the department chair would not take that. That would be a teacher who would be paid overtime for a 6th teaching period.
Okay, and maybe CPS would give us money for that.
Maybe.
Maybe. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, maybe, but probably not.
Math?
Math, I don't know if there's any math teachers on the call, but math is the high level ones, levels 3 and 4, are relatively set for the most part, but we have freshmen coming in that go into Math 1, Math 2, Math 3A and 3B. So with the math department, I sit down once they get all of the placements from the students, and this one usually doesn't get settled till July when we get all the data from the kids coming in. They've done the placement tests and so forth. But once again, it's those things that we need 17 sections approximately of students in Math 1, that are coming in. That may we usually end up with like 5 sections of Math 1, 15 sections of Math 2, and then 3A and 3B will go up by 1 or 2 sections each. And those vary greatly year to year. Some years, a lot of COOT students come into 3A and 3B. Some years, more go into 2. It's just the number of sections we need is there. We just don't know where they will be until July because of placement tests and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And that we sit down with the math department every year and go over.
And this table is so helpful. I just wanted to thank you for sharing it, especially for me to see the teacher names and everything. I just appreciate this work. So world language.
World language there, there's lots of, it's next to the department chair, I just put 400. World language, we have approximately 475 freshmen come in. Not all of them will take a world language. It's usually, and a lot of, with CTE, they either take a language or an art. And we have usually about 120 kids in the CTE classes. And it's approximately half of them don't take a language, half take an art. So it's just a matter of guessing as to how many kids are going to be in the languages. I don't guess to put them in Spanish, one, French, or Chinese. Chinese and French, we all usually have 3 sections of one, two of the Chinese one in terms of kids selecting them. Spanish, we have a lot of placement in that, and as well as like the heritage speakers. We generally have somewhere between 47 and 55 kids that are native speakers that go into that. So that the numbers in the language are very fluid based on placement tests like math are as well.
And Dr. Powers, that question mark with the 3, that's a part-time, half-time?
Yeah, for the Chinese, that is a half-time position.
Okay, and that's been the half-time. Is it hard to fill that half-time position?
I'm sorry?
Is it difficult to fill that?
No.
Okay.
We already have somebody lined up for it.
Okay. Thank you. Physical education.
Okay, so class sizes in PE are 40. They're larger than the 5 departments we've had so far. The first 5 departments we looked at, class size is approximately 28-ish. PE, it is 40. And so this one in here is, you can see the numbers that we have in here. Actually, freshmen, I put 465 for some reason instead of 475. But we have the 46 sections there, and then the department chair scheduler. That is, obviously I'm the scheduler, and the department chair. I generally don't take a release for the department chair. I did this scheduling for the last 16 years and had the release for those 2 for the scheduling aspect, and so the department chair one actually goes away because I already have release and some time to do that. But,
so it would be more accurate to just put this as a 0.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That aligns with what Dr. Powers had said today. So
I generally do that. Like, I've never taken it because scheduling at our school is, some schools it's a full-time position because there's a lot of fluidity in kids coming in and out of the school year round. At our school, it's very intensive, September, October, with changes and moves, and August, and then starting in like January on is a lot of the work is done in it, in the back end, preparing for all of the stuff. Whereas other schools, it's literally full time because they get 5 kids come in a day, 10 kids leave, and it's a different thing. It's at selective enrollment schools.
So maybe it'd be more appropriate to leave the department chair as 1, put scheduler as 1, just for transparency for the other departments. And then as a chair for physical education, you're also on the ILT.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think you should leave department chair as 1 because you are doing work for that.
Yeah. More of the release time is the scheduling, though. And there isn't a scheduler in the CPS that does not have a minimum of 2. I'll tell you that. So
you okay? I guess 6 to 1 half doesn't do another.
Yeah.
But and then Dr. Powers. So the athletic director is a 1.2, and they get 2 release periods. As a music person, I just get a little surprised sometimes by this stuff. Talk to me.
Well, the reason for the 0.2, first of all, the reason for the release periods is to perform all the duties. And I try to provide an overview of that as you requested earlier, which are very broad and very significant, including a lot of external communication, a lot of record keeping, everything from, in more recent times, the COVID protocols and everything, and communicating that out to all the coaches, supervising the coaches themselves, many of whom are not Jones employees. So they have to be communicated with outside of school hours, largely speaking. And there is the supervision of the athletic events and working during the summer. Coach Grassetto freely gives of his time over the summer. So as I pointed out, if we were to go to an overtime basis with an hourly spreadsheet, it would probably cost us significantly more. So this is a major job. Most high schools, in fact, all high schools I've previously had experience with, a school of this size, the athletic director was a full-time position and often had a secretary to boot, and sometimes an assistant who taught part-time and supervised part-time. We now have a big school program. The only thing we don't have really of any size is football. And beyond that, we've got basically everything and a high level of participation. So that means a lot of record keeping. It means managing the physicals that have to come through and the record of that, and communicating out the schedules and everything else. So it's a big, big job.
Okay, just wanted that on the record.
Thank you.
Roberto,
Yeah, so let me ask you a quick question regarding the athletic director position.
Your voice is really garbled. I'm having a hard time understanding you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. Apologize for that. So the athletic director responsibility, are they also responsible for securing like fields? Like
Yes.
let's say the baseball field, the girls softball fields for practice. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Park district properties, making sure they're scheduled, and also to some degree, the balancing of our use of our own one field and our gym. In other words, Troy handles things like the outside rentals and scheduling for facilities, but Mr. Grassetto, Coach Grassetto handles, practice time for this basketball team, that basketball team, et cetera, in our one gym. And the same is true, for example, with the field. Right now, we have had overlapping truncated schedules that involve lacrosse, involve both soccer teams and different levels of soccer teams, and of course our track team using the track area. So that's all something that he coordinates as well.
Okay, thank you. That doesn't fall on the coach's responsibility.
It does to a certain extent, because the coaches have to determine just exactly what their needs are. And then it's the AD's responsibility to make sure those things can be scheduled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a quick clarifying question. I mean, we don't have to focus, we can move on from physical education, but I noticed that you sum up the actual sections and then the load, and then eventually do those match? Because they're not matched. I mean, like, so for example,
Who are
yeah,
you?
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I guess I'm asking Mr. Helston.
Yeah, go back to it though. I'm on a phone, so I don't have a computer.
Oh, okay. So for example, world language, the sum of the actual sections is 56, but when you do the staff member load, it's 58. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around like the.
In general, in PE with a lot of the courses, we for example, the freshmen may end up being class size of 43 or 44. Sophomore, some of the team sports classes we may need to increase the numbers in there. We need to increase slightly in some of the classes to accommodate and make that number come down. And with generally in the bigger sections, like not the bigger, the higher number of courses,
sections,
the freshman and sophomore ones, if they make those a little bigger, it's a less of a burden in finding a section to create in those classes, because there's 11 classes to spread it out over versus 3 or 4.
Okay. Okay. All right. CTE is a different animal. Do they not have department chairs, or it's just totally different?
This year there was no release for the department chair, because there was the number of sections that we had was 10. it appears that next year we'll be able to have a section for representing computer. I believe it's computer science and engineering have a representative, and then the CTE freshman classes, the level ones that you see there, those numbers are sort of artificial freshman numbers because we have 75 to 80 kids that come in, and then we have some other incoming CTE selective enrollment students who want to take the CTE classes. So we generally fill 2 sections of those. We'll probably end up filling a 3rd section of the engineering 1, just because we have the ability and the space to do it. And usually we have the demand to do that as well, like enough requests to fill a 3rd section for that.
And if I could add on that same note, we may be, depending on our total freshman numbers, we may be adding some additional freshmen into the 2 CTE programs from the wait list. That's the only wait list we have access to. So if it looks like we're soft on those total numbers, then, in terms of the actual CTE admission, as opposed to the selective enrollment kids who opt in, then we may add to those to get the numbers up. Yeah.
It sounds like his phone rang or something.
Yeah, my sister's
That won't
calling me
be.
for my birthday, so.
Oh, happy birthday. Woo, woo. Okay. Happy birthday to you. Okay. I someday I will have another meeting with you, Dr. Pars. I'd love to know more about CTE and just curious of, how that program is supported and that kind of stuff. And then our last one is computer science.
Yeah, computer science is pretty straightforward. The last one there, the data structures, is a class, but it's not a class because those students go to, I think it's University of Chicago for the 2nd semester. I'm not exactly sure. I just put in the course code, and Mr. Colati coordinates that with, like I said, I believe it's the University of Chicago. And so the first semester, they're not really taking a class, but he, for lack of a better word, tutors them along and to get them to the point where they need to take the class, and they take it the second semester, I believe. So they get kind of split up between his other classes, and he works with them on the side while the other students are doing classwork and that. So the computer science load that's why it's a 0 for those 15 students, if you look at that one, because it's a class, but it's not a class. So because it's only part of the year, and it's I guess you could say side work. I don't know however it's something he organizes anyway. So
Those students are embedded in other sections.
yeah.
Okay. Any questions before I stop sharing?
There
You
is
wanna go-
one more thing on the bottom.
Yes.
If you look,
Oh,
the FPA. There's 2 tabs for FPA and the world language was easier to put in there, but the FPA one, if you haven't looked, so that's the fine and performing arts, and it's a separate tab because it's much different. It's such specialized, 5 or 6 different areas in there when you see that in there. And so there's the visual arts, dance, orchestra, instrumental band, drama, and vocal music on there. And the chair on there, I don't know if it's put on there. It should be on the vocal.
let's see. It's not. So maybe that's but here you have 4. So maybe that's where
Yeah, that's where the 5th comes.
she does all the vocals that you have. Okay, that makes sense. So maybe this is a copy because I can't edit your sheet, but I think it would be helpful to have that chair, designation there.
And I know, is there anything you wanted on this one here? I just wanted to point out this was there as well. So
Yeah, no, thank you. I did miss it. Any questions on fine and performing arts? Fine. And then
I was gonna say, the one thing with this one with freshmen
Hmm.
is this is a matter of finding, there's another column in here, I think that says freshman seats or something like that, that I've put in. It's a matter of finding their first and second selections and filling the classes that we have, because a lot of this is specialized spaces and rooms. And like, for example, visual arts, we can't add more art labs because we have 2, we have 14 sections of them. So it's some of this is finding the spaces in which they have an interest in either as a first or second selection. And that's where the 1 level intro levels, and in some cases there's some what's the word, placements as well, vocal, musical, and that kind of thing.
Okay. Helen.
Sorry, I'm going to ask like 2 kinds of questions tonight, and one of them is about department chair releases. I am not a member of the Fine and Performing Arts department, but I thought in the past that there was a release period for fine arts and a different release period for performing arts. Is that accurate? I don't see that reflected in like the top section. I also could be wrong.
No, that's correct. At this particular point, for one thing, Mr. Meyer, who is the department chair, is going to be on leave next year, so someone else will be filling in for him. Mrs. Mockel will actually be performing department chair duties. However, we need all of the visual arts teachers all teaching 5 periods to cover all their particular needs. And so we'll have to work out something where we can provide some assistance in that regard if we can. Department chair. One of the things we've talked about is temporarily recombining all the fine arts under a single chair for 1 year until such time as when Mr. Meyer comes back and Myers comes back, and we're able to fund a chair position separate. Previous to just a few years ago, this was 1 department. It's similar to what engineering and computer science have done. They have combined into a single department because they're small. These 2 departments, or broad departments, had separated because they were large, both of them. But we may have to temporarily combine them just for the sake of convenience, at least for the coming school year.
Do you want to talk about the last tab? This is the world language tab.
It's just the second one. It's just a little more separated than the other one. We looked at that already. It's the same data. Just
Yes,
that
I see
put
it.
into the one sheet. So
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wish I was like, in retrospect, I wish we would have had that earlier, but I also realized that you're waiting for the freshman numbers, and then also acceptance letters went out a whole month later. So I feel like everything is shifted. And so next year, I think we'll just be in a much better position. One, we're familiar with what information you can give us, and then, and hopefully we'll be back on track for acceptance letters and other things like that. So
yeah.
Thank you.
And just other things that go into that, the timeline on that too, are when course selection changes, deadline is, which is generally the first week of May. And then also, the freshman, the freshman selections as well. Oh, summer school registration, because many of those courses change with summer school registration, civics, computer science, and those full sections of those get removed and the kids into another class somewhere because of summer school, is taking summer school and then taking something different the following year.
Jose has a question. Go ahead, Jose.
Yes, so the class size numbers that we were just shown, those are basically similar to other years' class sizes, right?
Yes, they're fairly consistent year to year.
Okay, so I guess my concern is that given that we're still under a pandemic, what are we doing for the students so that they're not too close together? What are we doing to reduce the class size?
I'm sorry, are we talking about for next school year?
Right, yes.
At this point, the plan for CPS is that all students will be back at school, and we will not be able to have classes of 15. It's not possible. What we will have are standard size classes. Whatever health and safety protocols are in place, we will follow those. I anticipate masking could still be a factor. I anticipate some aspects of social distancing in certain areas could be a factor. But in the classrooms, we're going to have 28, 29, 30 students in many classes, fewer in others. And they're fairly large classrooms to begin with. So it's not like they're generally speaking, not like they're sitting right on top of each other to begin with.
And by that time, anyone who is medically able can be vaccinated. So I think that will affect the guidance quite a bit.
Yes, well, there's a lot going to happen between now and then in terms of guidelines.
ISBE came out with some announcements today saying they want all school districts in person next year.
So I had a question, Roberto, do you want to go first? Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, Dr. Powers mentioned that Mr. Myers is going to be taking a leave of absence for the year. Is that right?
Yes, sir,
Is there a reason why we're not adding a temporary assigned teacher?
Oh, we
to
are.
alleviate some of the. Oh, you are. Okay.
We are. Oh, yes. We will hire someone. It's just that his leave has not been finalized, and we cannot hire someone until CPS finalizes the leave.
Okay.
But
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, he was actually going to take that leave this school year, and because of the pandemic, it changed everyone's plans, so he postponed it, and so he's taking it in the coming school year. We did have a TAT lined up, which we were very excited about, and she was offered a regular teaching position at another school, an ongoing position. But we will find someone and a good teacher. We have no shortage of applicants, that's for certain.
Thank you for that clarification.
So I had a question, I think the English position is a good example of this. So, when we're looking at especially equity issues, GPA and test scores by race and income. And I'm not sure if I saw like freshmen on track numbers as well, if those are similar. But, for example, in English, if instead of having 17 sections of freshman English, if we had 22 sections, that's a difference of class size of 28 versus 22 students. Or even if we had 20 sections of English instead of 17, that's a class size of 24 versus 28. And, when we're looking at really supporting students, especially right now, and especially with an equity lens, it seems like class size is something that we should, do whatever we can to support. So that kind of trade-off is, what I think we should be looking at as an LSC when we're budgeting, and thinking, what the effect of closing positions is, and other ways to make this balance, or whether that is something that, should we be funding a position out of internal accounts, that sort of thing. And this is another point where having a CIWP to really look at, to shape our goals and shape our trade-offs would be helpful. So I don't know if you have thoughts about the class size and, whether there's ever been an effort to accommodate smaller class sizes, especially in a class like a core class like English or math, and whether we are interested in that as a school and supporting students in that way.
If I could respond to that, I mean, in general terms, we're conforming to the average class size request for CPS, what is considered to be typical and usual, and also fits within the contract. Reducing class sizes, again, can be a desirable thing if it's something that can be funded. I don't think we have seen with the average class sizes that we have had historically, which very much mirror these, as Rob was saying a few minutes ago, it's a fairly constant thing over a period of years. In other words, enrollment goes up, number of teachers goes up, number of sections go up, or should number of sections go up and number of teachers go up. But because we've reached a level of relative stasis, I guess you might say, we have plateaued and are not likely to go anywhere much beyond that. Adding back in a teaching position that in today's budget or this coming budget, we simply cannot afford. For one thing, we're not losing that much in the way of sections of English. 2 of the periods that were being taught, not by that teacher in that position, but being taught by an English teacher, are no longer going to be offered. And that's the Eagle Leaders mentor class that we have discontinued. And that's by mutual agreement with everyone who's concerned. So we already had lost essentially cut half a position without doing anything that would not have affected the students. By being able to manage, and the fact that we're the numbers we have, the fact that we have a relatively, right now we're planning for 475 freshmen. We may not have that. That's kind of our top end number. So I think we will find that our average class size for English 1 could be 28. It could be somewhat less than that. And it's also going to vary, of course, from section to section. But, again, I don't know that the difference between a class size of 28 and a class size of 24 is going to be all that significantly different in terms of the support. If we have the need for support for students, we're going to be looking, in addition to the utilization of those OST funds and other types of support that we can provide. That's also one of the purposes of Academic Lab, of course, is the access students have to their teachers during office hours for tutoring and that type of thing. So I think right now we have a schedule and class sizes that are perfectly manageable and can support the interests of all of our kids, and have typically. Our freshman on track rate has remained typically 98 or higher, 98% or higher, often as high as 99% and higher. That is very, very strong. Our overall on track rate right now has dropped, and I think dropped a little bit down to about 95 something. And that is, again, in the face of pandemic and all of that. I foresee that rebounding considerably next year and getting back to our average, which is around 98 to 99%. And that enables us to focus on individual students rather than large swaths of the student population.
Mr. Heselton, do you want to go? Do you have a addition?
Also, in terms of class, we're very space limited right now, doing the scheduling. Ellen can speak to this. In science, if we tried adding classes, we couldn't. I think we have 1, maybe 2 open class spaces in the science labs. Math and English areas are similar. Each class period, we might have 1 or 2 rooms open in the building, but in different areas. So they might, it might be on the 6th floor of one building, and there's nothing in. Trying to add in an additional 5 full sections would be very, very challenging, if not impossible, based on the space limitations of the capacity we're at. Because we're running, I believe, at 97% capacity.
We're actually at about 105%. What's considered ideal capacity is about, I think it is 86% of total number of seats available at any one time, and we are well past that now. We hit that mark for 1 year and then kept going. But right now we're looking at, we have the room for the kids we have, but for additional sections, that's going to continue to be problematic. That's why we can't let the enrollment go up to 2020 or 2025. We simply don't have the classroom space.
Thanks. Ellen, did you? Okay, and then Roberta had a question in the chat about the Eagle Leader or Eagle Mentor. Eagle Mentor is separate, right? Was your question about Eagle Leaders?
We have a program which is the Eagle Mentors, which are juniors and seniors who work with incoming freshmen and serve as their mentors as they come in as part of our transition programming. Originally, we created that to support the kids and tried to create a curriculum that went with that, so that those kids actually had a class and then did all their Eagle Leaders work, independently and after school as an extracurricular. What we found was we really didn't need that class anymore. We were getting the kids wanted to do it as an extracurricular. So in effect, it's what became a redundancy. So we've dropped that as from the curriculum. That was not an English class, though. That was being taught by an English teacher. So that freed up 2 periods that we did not need for English, or freed up a teacher for 2 additional periods.
Sarah, I'm gonna go ahead.
Okay, yeah, my question was for hiring of the new teachers. We had talked about as part of the equity plan that's on the website. I'm sorry, my vocabulary is really bad tonight. Of having, I don't want to use the word checklist, but like a checklist that when you're hiring, so that we could hire more diverse teachers, or do we have like a process for that to ensure that that happens? Ellen, can you speak that? Was that part of the?
I know what we're talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Our commitment is to try to have a more diverse teaching staff. We only have a fairly small number of positions this year, and we are and have been very assiduous in trying to make sure we maintain and grow the diversity of our faculty and staff, particularly of African American teachers, but also of Hispanic teachers as well. And that is part of our recruiting and hiring process. In other words, the departments who are working, with their department, they've created a department team for the interviews. We receive applications and resumes and inquiries. We send those to departments. They review them. They invite people for interviews and then make recommendations. And that is essentially what we're doing. And that is one of the things we're trying to accomplish through that process. However, if we cannot get someone that meets the needs of our kids and meets the needs of a position, someone who adds to the diversity, we're going to go with the person who can meet those needs. I'm very pleased with the number of candidates we've had for positions. I think we have had I think a more diverse pool to draw from than we have had sometimes in the past. And as I've mentioned before, I've actually gone out on recruiting trips, but again, because I can't carry contracts with me, as some superintendents can do, it's a little bit difficult to get somebody to say, hey, come on out to Chicago, interview, and we'll talk about the position. But I'm fairly confident we're going to be able to make a go of this. And it's a slow process. It really is. I mean, there's again, the pool, everyone is going after the same pool of teachers as we are.
Right.
We have the advantage of being an attractive school that people want to apply to. And we make sure that through CPS, through our own advertising, through the networking of the different departments, they get the word out about our applications. For example, for an English position, we'll get 75 to 150 applications just coming in through the CPS system. Social studies, comparable numbers. Science, it's a little tougher with science, and mathematics, but we do get good, strong pools of candidates.
Okay, and so my just one more thing, and then I was thinking that everyone could ask their questions, and then I can make a motion and we could approve the budget as presented. But my final comment is that I appreciate the transparency that was shown this evening. I would hope that we can continue this type of transparency, and maybe it just depended on trying to see if your appeal got rejected. But I just love the spreadsheet that Mr. Voigt put together, or whomever put it together, or whoever put it together for the to share with us tonight, that showed what was changing, what we're closing, and things like that. And that's what I hope, that we can just continue to start at that level with the sections and everything. Even if we know things will change, I think it'll just really help the dialogue, and I think we'll ask a lot less questions. Okay, that's my.
And I agree with you. And again, I second that. The only difficulty is sometimes we just simply don't know. Some things we do know right away. We know fairly quickly. We know if somebody's leaving, so we can estimate the cost differential there. But with regard, and we have to wait for enrollment to determine, do we need certain staff? Do we have to add? Can we reduce or close a position? That type of thing. So those are always shifting things. Because they're dealing with people's jobs, we have to be careful as to how we discuss them, because we don't want to be cavalierly talking about closing somebody's job when maybe we don't need to. And I think we've done a pretty good job, I think, overall in our conversations to be mindful of that. But we will always try to get the information to the LSC in as timely a fashion as possible. We have essentially a template now for what you are asking for. There's a lot of background information you now have for this and previous years, which will not be necessary to update other than by adding the new year, the new school or fiscal year. So I think we can move forward with this with confidence that we'll have the level of transparency that you're looking for.
Elaine, do you have a question or comment?
Thank you. I did have a question on Dr. Powers and administrative team, as it relates to hiring practices to ensure greater diversity. Have you all made any changes in your hiring practices? Has there been a change, or are you doing the same thing?
No, we're essentially operating the way we have. I've always been a strong believer that the hiring needs to, the leadership and the hiring needs to come from the teachers who are going to be working directly with those people. It does not mean the administration doesn't have a role. I mean, obviously, I see to it that the positions are advertised. Number one, positions are identified, advertised, applications acquired both through our website, through CPS, and through other sources. I do a certain amount of screening of applicants, in the sense that I will go through and find applicants who simply are not qualified. If people will apply for the darndest jobs that they have absolutely no qualifications for in terms of degree, certification, etc., and then pass on the viable applicants to the departments. And they, of course, are also at the same time making contacts with colleagues in other schools through their networking and so forth. So we're doing pretty much the same as we have done. And then the department makes one or more recommendations, depending on whether they feel like they've got the one person, or if they feel like there might be a couple of possibilities. And I start the process of, I do interviews with those people. I do the background checks, which are essential in this process. And the whole time we're keeping an eye toward equity to make sure the word is out, the contracts are being made, we're getting the applications, and we're giving due consideration to that particular need for our school community. So we're following pretty much the same procedures we've done, but with maybe a little bit more of an eye toward equity and a little bit more consciousness of that.
Okay, well, thank you. The reason why I mentioned that is because as it relates to current best practices for equity, diversity, inclusiveness, and things of that nature, it's important as a part of your success agenda that you interrogate your systems. And so I asked the question because if you're doing the same thing, there may be a chance that you'll get the same results. So I would challenge the team to kind of look at those things, and specifically with an eye to see, wow, is there something here that may be preventing a certain pool of people from applying. And then that way you can look at that. Another thing is, I know that CPS has recently done the implicit bias training. I attended that maybe a month ago. And so I would recommend doing some of those things because if you do the same things, you may get the same results. And then sometimes it's just, taking a deeper look at the practices and structures that are in place so that you can yield the equity that you're seeking. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your feedback.
Violet?
Yeah, I was actually just going to echo what was just said, and add on a little bit to say that this isn't just like a Jones thing that's going on. I'm currently on a board through the Illinois State Board of Education that's looking at how we're recruiting teachers for educator prep programs in general. So like, this isn't an easy task ahead, but I do think that there is space for movement to be made. And actually I get the having teachers, right, have the autonomy and having some say in the hiring practice, because at the end of the day, those are your peers that you're working with. But to echo what was just said, right, if a teacher was hired under a system that upheld white supremacist forms of thinking and education, then that's who they're going to look for when they're looking at different candidates. But I actually wanted to ask maybe Ms. Martin-Sek, since you're the only teacher here, how you personally feel like the process for hiring has gone, because like clearly I'm not in the building, and like if you think that it is equitable or like where you see growths and where you see strengths.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for checking in. So my experience is very limited to the science department because that's the department that I teach in. And as Dr. Powers mentioned, we are in the process of hiring. So as a department, we are making some changes to our hiring process. I'm kind of inspired by conversations between department chairs about how to increase student voice during the hiring process. So that's a big change for us. Like we've done sample lessons in the past. I think we're considering like a student interview as a way of broadening that student voice. And I know a lot of the legwork and outreach to put it out there that there's a position available. My department chair has been doing that. And so I think that's, from my perspective, that's kind of what the department hiring looks like for me. Science is a little bit unusual because we're very specialized. So it's very much like I teach physics. I can like speak to pedagogy and like classroom management and like building a culture of community, like of respect in a classroom. But I'm definitely not like a biology or environmental science expert. So that's a little bit different from other departments where the expertise is more like everybody has expertise in the specific areas. So again, my experience is very much like that. I have seen some growth on individual department levels in terms of changing hiring practices. And again, specifically trying to incorporate student voice in that process. I know this year at the beginning of the school year, there was a hiring committee was formed. And I know as PPLC, we've asked for some updates from that committee, and I'm not sure if they've met in the past several months, which, I understand that there's many things that take up that urgent space. During the school year, there's a lot of things that have happened, but I think that's also something where like we don't really have a broad school-wide change, as Dr. Powers had mentioned, that hasn't taken place this year. It's more on an individual departmental basis. So yeah, thanks for asking. And I don't know if that's clear or if I can provide additional clarification.
And if I may piggyback on what Ellen was saying, when I've said that we're doing some of the same things, what I mean is the teachers are still deeply involved in that process. In other words, this is not a top-down process. My role in terms of hiring is largely in terms of facilitating, making sure that we, the word is out there, making sure that we are helping people network. One thing that Ellen talked about was the student voice. That is something that departments have often, again, if possible, because like, for example, during the pandemic, it's been a bit more difficult, having guest lessons. In other words, teacher actually coming in, teaching a class, or the teacher candidates come in and getting feedback from the students on that. So that is I think, a valuable tool as well. So again, we're looking, and please understand, we are so mindful of the need of greater diversity of our faculty, but so is every other school in the country. I mean, it is a major push across the nation to try to have faculties that more clearly reflect the ethnicities and the backgrounds of the students. And that's something that is very much in the forefront of our thoughts as we go through all stages of this process.
Roberto?
This question is for Dr. Powers. Through the Davis Square training, the anti-racist, anti-bias training, have they addressed the hiring practices and some of the implicit biases that may go into hiring practices, and also how the teachers, our staff of color, how they are feeling now, right? And what kind of scrutiny or what kind of pressures they're feeling. Has Davis Square addressed those things? And the other thing I'd like to know is what have you taken away, and what are some of the policies and practices that Jones is planning on implementing?
Ellen, I noticed you wanted to respond, especially as a teacher coming off of the Davis Squared discussions. Is that something that within your department you feel like has informed what your practices are in terms of the hiring process and discussions of that?
I do. I was actually waving at Mr. Voigt as he headed out. But I will say something that Elaine had mentioned earlier about examining implicit bias, that literally was part of our session today, is like our facilitators bringing up white supremacy culture traits and how like school systems, particularly at Jones, can reinforce and support those. And then like as next steps, as we begin to examine those traits, also examining our own implicit biases. So I think Dr. Powers, you were on when she referenced that implicit bias survey at the end of the PD today. So I'm not sure if that actually answers your question, Mr. Montevar, because like I said, I was kind of waving at Mr. Boyd. But I do think that has made some changes. I've had definitely really great conversations within my department. My department chair has done an amazing job of facilitating conversations about like equity and race and culturally responsive teaching throughout the school year this year. And I'm very lucky that she has put in that like legwork to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think that's reflected in, especially in the other two departments where we are actually hiring, which would be English and social studies. I think they're utilizing a lot of what it is that they have gained from the Davis Squared discussions to form what they're doing with regard to what they're looking for, who they're looking for, how they're framing questioning, and things like that. I have looked at several of the recorded interviews because, again, I guess all the interviews so far have been virtual, so they could be recorded, or remote, I should say. And I'm very impressed with the number one, how well organized they are, but also how focused they are on truly gaining understanding of our teacher candidates. And I'm pretty impressed with at this point, I've actually had 3 candidates that were on the cusp, I guess, so you might say, of hiring. One is a Chinese teacher, of course, and we do have a native speaker of Chinese lined up for that half-time position. In English and in social studies, both. One, we're just about ready to make an offer once we complete our reference checks. And then English, we're working on some things as well. Again, very mindful of the need for that greater diversity within this hiring process. So it is it's first and foremost, I guess you might say, or certainly foremost in our thinking.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Ellen and Dr. Powers. I guess my concern is that, if it's just dependent on departments, and there's not a scaffolding school-wide approach, then we're not going to make a significant impact in hiring and recruiting and hiring staff of color, in particular teachers of color. So I just want to make sure that the leadership team is creating policies and practices that will eliminate some of those barriers and really drive this hiring practices through an equity lens, but also taking care of our current staff, our current teachers.
Mhm.
So that's important.
And that is a lot of the thrust of the so-called hiring committee, which is a bit of a misnomer. It's more of a faculty wellness, if you will. I don't mean wellness in terms of health and things like that, but looking toward the retention of people. What makes it worthwhile to be at Jones? What makes it a place where you want to stay and thrive as a teacher, and those kinds of factors. So again, with everything that we've had to do with the reopening and so forth, not to mention everything else we've had going on, that is still a work in progress. Let's put it this way. But again, assuring everyone that you mentioned scaffolding. There is a scaffold for it, essentially a scaffolding for it, in the sense that there's a starting process. There's a way in which we make sure that we need the positions, what we're looking for those positions, the kinds of characteristics we're looking for people, and then how that is communicated out, interviewed, back, again, further interviews and so forth. So I think people will be, pleased with the outcome. But this is a long-term process. It isn't just a one-year fix, especially when you've essentially got 3 positions to fill.
So I think with respect to that, it is one of the equity initiatives. If I'm not mistaken, I put that in that running record that I've been putting together. I don't think there's been a meeting of the hiring/retention committee since February. I think, especially what Elaine was mentioning, having as an LSC, we'd like to see the actual description of things, and I think some details. One thing that Elaine mentioned in the chat is recruiting from HBCUs. So, not just expecting to have a pool of candidates appear, but where else can we find those candidates?
And again, I have done that. We just haven't done it lately because in the times that we have done it, going back several years ago, the results were essentially nil. I mean, we weren't able to persuade anyone to come to Chicago. And that basically, people were very frank about it. They were frank about the violence, about the cold, because most of the historically Black colleges and universities are in the Southeast, especially in the South, and some fine universities. But I didn't see a lot of people wanting to move to Chicago during some of those conversations. However, that's something we can also revisit, especially if had a good relationship with Howard University in Washington. They have a good teacher education program.
Ellen, do you have another?
Yeah, and so this is just like to make sure that it's very clear that the hiring committee, as you said, Cassie, hasn't met since February. And as far as PPLC reports that we've received, has never discussed retention. So I wanted to bring that up and make it really clear that it's a goal, maybe a work in progress, but this work is not being done quite yet at Jones. So I wanted to make that very clear.
But also part of the measure of this will be the outcome. What will be the outcome of hiring? And I think you'll see that we've been working very hard in that area.
This also sounds like a good equity committee codification, working with Mr. Mitchell kind of goal.
Thanks. So I think we can go back to the big budget spreadsheet now, basically.
Okay, I was on mute. Okay, I think the best way is to do this logistically, I'll just walk through column F to review any changes, and then we'll do an overall approval of the entire budget. These, with the caveat that, that number at the top may change, but I don't think it will. Throughout the year, I'm saying, it's a fluid thing, but we'll always be in the black, as they say in finance. Okay, so the top number has been adjusted, $12,228,392. And then we get a little, there might be some in SBB money that can be allocated, like you said, for books or other expenses. The only change in the internal account rental income section was the operations manager expense. The fees is the same. We did $100 tech fee last meeting. Department budgets, again, column F are the same. We just reduced slightly a few of the departmental budgets based on historical data. Software is a software that was discussed. There's no changes there. I'm sorry, miscellaneous supplies, there's no changes. Software, no changes from our last meeting. Special projects, no changes. There's that earmark of $25,000 for translation. Technology, there's no change. And textbooks, there was a slight change with a reduced price in the AP Human Geo books, and therefore that line item went down by $7,000. And these are our total remaining balance from 124 funds, which we will offset with surplus or rollover from the internal accounts, giving us this number potentially for internal accounts, depending on expenses and collection of fees. If anyone has a question, I'll take it. If not, I will make a motion. Yes, I hear a chat. I understand why speaking like this. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Roberto?
Yeah, so I'd like to revisit three items. One, why wouldn't we just restore all the budgets, their funding?
What does that
So
mean?
that's the first. So, we went with, I think we cut the budget for the counseling department, maybe then. So what I'm saying is going back to the original fundings for all the budgets, for all the departments. Why wouldn't we do that? And then the second item that I would like to address is I now want, I would like to include $25,000 for test prep or homework help, and then $25,000 for college expenses, or not college expenses, I'm sorry, college counseling in this. I understand that the ADF and the OST funds, but we are paying for 3 positions out of the internal account, and now we can pay $50,000 for tutoring, for after school, for homework help, for test prep courses, and for college counseling, $25,000. And I think we would be fine. And I think that might drop the internal account budget to maybe a little less than $300,000. That's where I'm at.
But
So
you
my first
realize,
question is why wouldn't we go back to the original amount? And then I would like those 2 line items put in place.
okay, to address that first, you realize that we are going to reopen those positions on July 1st, and we don't have money for them, for both of them. Well, we're reopening the AP, so we're hoping to pay for the AP, which is $165 from the $265. OST money is specifically for programs like homework help, after school tutoring. It's out of school time. It's anything out of school that is going to help support the kids. It's $150,000. I see what you're saying by putting it in here, I think that we could have a more robust plan for all of that money. We don't have to rush that tonight. Like, we actually don't even have to approve the internal accounts tonight. We could just approve the top budget, and that's it. And we could walk away, and we don't have to, we don't have to approve internal accounts. It would be great if we did it in June, but it's not like the money's allocated anywhere. It's already there. We do have to approve the fee. So,
So I appreciate that, Sarah. I think what I'm saying is, you just mentioned having like a long-term plan and really allocating those funds, right? So this is a down payment. That's what I'm asking for.
So you just want the commitment by having it as a line item in the budget, knowing that we will likely pay for it with the OST funds or other funds. Is that what you're saying? I
would
just am
like a
not sure
line-
we're ready tonight to say we're going to spend 25 on test prep and 25 on tutoring, okay. Dr. Powers.
No, I would just add that, adding something at this point, especially because we do have the additional funds available to us July 1. And that's where we're looking to build those things up in a more robust way. To create a line item on essentially a general sort of thing. It was like the discussion we had the other night regarding $2,500 for other programming, other software programming. We will have the resources for this. I just don't think, and I would agree with Sarah in this regard, I don't think it's necessary for us to create an actual line item in the internal accounts at this point. For one thing, we don't have the money there. The money is coming to us July 1. And that is what that will be for, will be those types of things.
Rachel, do you want to go?
I just wanted to ask, because I was attending the first whole school safety committee meeting before this meeting. And one thing that we were kind of unclear on, and I don't know or remember where it is in this spreadsheet, Sarah, is where the potential funds for, the decision on the SRO program go. Because I know that was kind of a contingency, and I just wanted to bring that up because we were all kind of wondering, is there our decision tonight, do we need to think about that or not? I'm not really, so I wanted to give the committee like an answer from that. Let's see on that.
That's a great question. That SRO money, which we think will be $100,000, we won't see until July 1st. And that would be, I think, the earliest we would see it. So I think having I keep talking about plans, I think having a plan in place for that is what we need. And I would definitely look to the committee and to the administration to work together so that so that's a collaborative effort, just to make sure that 100,000 is used. I don't know, Dr. Pars, if they have said if that can be for a position or if
Yes,
they have not. It
Yes,
can.
it absolutely
Okay,
can.
so
And again, that's the purpose of the whole school safety and security committee, is to make those recommendations to the LSC, and then the LSC will make a final decision either to accept the recommendations or not at the June meeting.
So just to be clear, we are not factoring in that money in this. Okay, thank you.
I would be tempted tonight just to vote on the top section, the stuff that's in Hyperion, basically for us, it's pretty much just 115, and save some of this for the discussion on June 1st. We'll vote on the fees then as well. Hopefully we'll have some information from the whole school safety plan. I don't know how many meetings they'll be able to have before June 1st. If they only had their first meeting tonight, they may not have much of a plan developed yet. But it would also be helpful to have a picture of what the school's priorities are as we figure out some of these things. And I understand that we wouldn't necessarily, until we have OST money or whatever, we wouldn't be filling a budget line, but creating a budget line for something that we prioritize, I think, is a very good point from Roberto. And, tonight is not the time to vote on whether it's going to be 25 versus 15,000, since we want to figure this out with a thoughtful plan of the ADF and the OST and the SRO funds, depending what the vote is on that. But we also don't have to decide this stuff tonight. CPS doesn't need this information from us yet. And so, we really have another 6 weeks before the fiscal year starts. And so that would be my preference. And I'm happy to hear from other people on that. Sarah, do you want to go? You have a hand up.
I guess my question is for Dr. Powers. What do you need? When would you like to have the internal accounts budget approved? That question, and then how long do you think it would? What do you need to develop a plan for the use of those other funds?
The other funds are going to take us over the summer to be able to develop the plans that we need. And I don't see them as necessarily having to be, they're reflected in this internal accounts in the sense of the funds that are listed at the bottom as they are there and they are available. But to populate any line items at this point, I think is very premature. That's going to take a while. I understand where Cassie is coming from for the approval, because the necessity for tomorrow is the approval of the 115 section. But I feel like we've worked through this budget pretty significantly, and it still provides for flexibility. In other words, there can be shifting of resources, and then of course we have the additional resources coming into us through those two separate plans. We also have the additional factor of if and when CPS opens up rentals and leases, we'll start having an income. When registration starts, we'll start having an income from the student fees. So those are all dynamics that this all still allows for. I would recommend that we vote on the budget as it is in toto, knowing that we still have the flexibility to make changes internally within that budget, particularly if funds are not needed in a certain area, they can be shifted to another area, and because income will start to populate. First the fees, and then potentially, we hope, the rentals and leases. So that would be my recommendation, is to vote to approve the budget in toto at this point.
And I have to agree, only because of the 4 hours of conversation we had 2 nights ago, where we really thoughtfully discussed everything and voted. The only amendments I'm making are the correction to the operations expense, and then the updating the textbook expense. And I just don't want to have, I've been in committees where we've had said, well, we'll do it later, and then we rehash every question. Mr. Menjivar.
Yeah, so it doesn't hurt to add those 2 lines. That's how I see it. And if you're looking to buy a house and you're actually willing to invest and actually put a bid on there, right, you go to the table, you drop that money. And we're at a position where I think we've made a lot of compromises, and I think Cassie is right. We can, right now, all CPS needs is the top level, and then we can decide on the rest.
But we won't have that money until July 1st, and we do need to approve this internal part before the end of the fiscal year. So I just respectfully disagree.
And Sarah, I concur with you. We still have flexibility. And again, funds are coming our way through those 2 areas, plus the income that we will have for the school. This is a dynamic process. All this is an outline, essentially.
Well, I think what Roberto is asking for is, in the outline, we need to have a line for test prep services and tutoring.
That's fine, but I don't agree with the idea of just plugging a random amount of money. I think that's, especially since we know where the money's coming from, it's not coming from this, it's coming from those other sources. But I mean,
just-
I will, you know, whichever way the sense of the LSC goes here. But I think we need to move on, essentially. We need to have this decided and behind us so we can begin doing some real planning as opposed to going back and forth over, you know, a certain amount here or a certain amount there. We've spent hour upon hour upon hour discussing this.
Well,
and
thank you,
making
Dr.
sure we
Powers.
do it.
Please don't add to the length with discussion about how long it is. Sorry. Roberto, what were the two lines
Thank
that
you very
wanted to
much.
have added?
So Dr. Powers, I just want to make a clarification. That $25,000 is not at random. That came from a historical budget line that Jones had and then removed it.
Okay.
But
And
please go ahead and add anything you wish to. I don't want to prolong the discussion any further. Sorry for being interrupted.
Roberto, did you have another line that you also wanted to have added? It was the test prep and tutoring.
Yeah, so tutoring, test prep, homework help, as well as college counseling and college fairs, anything related to college applications.
And what are you suggesting would be the amount
25,000
for total, for each?
for each.
So what do you, and we can vote on this. What do you want to, again, this will be, I think, something that we vote on piecemeal, and then we'll see how this vote comes out. And then we could do an overall vote, or we can do piecemeal. So test prep and tutoring, you want 20, Ellen?
Latrice has her hand up.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I do. So I just wanted to go back to your point, Sarah, about having things where they are and having the flexibility and putting these line items in, requiring a further discussion, because it's my understanding that Jones does have these things in some form or fashion. I don't know to what extent, but I think that there should be a conversation about that.
So I think we can put these lines in, and that conversation can be whatever information can be provided tonight, and people can vote yes or no on these lines based on that, and then we'll vote on the whole thing, and the whole thing will look like this outcome of this individual section thing that we just are talking about now.
If I may, Latrice, I think you're right. If we want to have a longer conversation about this, I think you are right that it's important. So then I would encourage this LSC to only vote on the top part until we have a longer conversation about the school's needs for the lower part, right? That's where I'm coming from. And I want to be able to support those students in the coming year.
Latrice, do you want to have another comment on that?
No, we can go ahead and vote.
Rachel, go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm just confused. Roberto, I don't quite, because I mean, this CPS needs this top part tomorrow at noon. And so we want to have a longer conversation, but we also don't have the time to have that conversation right now. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. I feel like we're not.
Dr. Powers?
I'm on the same page in terms of what we already had here. Just because we don't list a specific thing as a line item does not mean that we are not going to be doing it. We have the funds available to us beginning July 1. The planning will take place over the course of the summer, and using the funds that we have available to us at that time to put in figures here at this particular point is premature. It doesn't mean that we're not supporting it. For example, Mr. Menjivar mentioned the college fairs and college recruiting and so forth. A lot of that is built into the counseling department budget. A lot of that are things that are done in common with other schools. And adding a dollar amount doesn't necessarily apply to anything that needs to be done beyond what we're currently doing. I would much rather have a thoughtful progress we could work through with my staff here to determine what is the best way to use the funds that are going to be coming to us, rather than try to work around these particular line items that are being proposed. Again, just because it's not there doesn't mean it's not going to be addressed.
Okay, I think we can cut off debate and we can vote on each of these lines and whether they should be included.
I need to add them, so I need to know. So test prep and tutoring, what was the other one? College counseling
College counseling and access.
and access, and there was a third one. No?
No, it's just test prep services, tutoring, homework help, and then college counseling and access. So college counseling and access would include college fairs and
Test prep services, tutoring, and homework. Okay, so I'll make these yellow. I do love the color yellow. And I guess my motion will just be to add to special projects 2 line items. The first line item, test prep services and tutoring and homework help for $25,000, and college counseling and access and college fairs at an expense of $25,000 for a total of $50,000. Sorry, I can't spell. Does anyone have a second? I gotta write this down. Second?
Did you make the motion or did I make?
I just made the motion.
I second it.
Okay, let me do a roll call. Oh, you guys can see me typing all this craziness. Let me stop sharing.
For clarity for everyone, the internal account stuff that's not tied to positions especially is something that you can modify and revise. So right now, if you approve this, it will come out of internal accounts. After July 1st, if we get OST and ADF funds that can be used for these kinds of activities, then we will need to allocate those funds anyway, and we'll have a vote on those. And so it could be that we fund these with that. So it's more like a commitment that we're going to fund this no matter what.
But we don't have that money yet. Just, until the money is in the bank. Okay. Okay, so Boyd.
Yay.
Bugs.
Yes.
Ana Prado.
Yes.
Cresswell.
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Okay. Hilbrands?
Abstain.
Me, I'm a nay. Martinsek.
Yay.
MacArthur.
Abstain.
Menjivar.
Yay.
Powers.
No.
Zen.
Yes.
So it's 7, so it's going to be on there. It is there, and it is no longer, well, I'll leave it yellow because it's new. All right, okay. So now I would like to make a motion to approve everything, column F. Yes, Dr. Powers.
Second.
Okay.
I was going to move.
Okay, sorry.
Vote in toto. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me do a roll call. Okay. Boyd.
Yay.
Bugs.
Abstain.
Serna Prado.
Yay.
Cresswell.
Yay.
Hernandez.
Yay.
Hilbrands.
Yay.
Yay. Martinsek.
Yay.
MacArthur.
Yay.
Menjivar,
Yay.
Powers,
Yay.
Then.
Yay.
Okay.
One thing, it may be that Denaya can't vote on this full column.
Oh.
So that's,
I'll take a look at that and make a note here.
yeah, because it's allocating personnel as opposed to
No, good point.
general account stuff for the most part.
Okay.
Okay, I think we have enough to give CPS tomorrow. We do not have another meeting scheduled till June 1st. Dr. Powers, I got your email in response to the principal evaluation. If we do want to do a feedback session, all of that has to happen before May 30th. So am I correct in assuming from your email that you don't want to do a feedback session?
No, I do not.
Okay, we will be able to finalize that, and we don't need to have another closed session to finalize it. And that is due May 30th. I think that is all done. I suppose since we looked at the participation, someone could have hopped in. Let me look at it. There. Oh, we are good. Okay, seeing no further business, we adjourn. Thanks, everyone.
I think Dr. Powers has his hand up.
Dr. Powers, was that an old hand or a new hand?
New hand.
Okay,
There
sorry,
is a form-
unadjourned, wait, who did we lose?
Yeah, there is a form that needs to be completed with the vote. So if we could communicate that, and there are signatures required for that to be submitted. I think that will follow up the actual submission that Jeremy does tomorrow. But we will get that as well. And then there's an element of that or a portion of that for the CIWP, but that will have to wait till the June meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, and official adjournment at 8:51.